not yet. I see people are on the chat. Then you should be in very soon. So I apologize for the delay. I'm not sure why it's not just.
Yeah, Cindy, you may want to track the chat because people are saying they're in or not in.
You mean Christy?
Christy, I'm sorry.
Yeah, not Cindy.
But it's like, yeah, okay.
Okay, everybody, welcome. Yeah, it's our second welcome. If you would like to put your name and if you're affiliated with any organization in the chat, feel free to do that. Tell us where you're joining from tonight. It's always nice to see where people are. So go ahead and do that, and we'll just look at that at our leisure. So for any of you who are new, which it doesn't look like we really have new people, but if you are, or if you're confused about the legislative session or anything that Retake Our Democracy is doing, please go to retakeourdemocracy.org and check it out, and particularly to the NM legislation tab on the top menu bar.
And if you don't know anything about our organization and somehow found yourself here, check out About, and it'll tell you what we're about and who we are.
Right.
But that would be unlikely.
Okay.
Didn't have anything to do on a Wednesday, so I just came here.
Tonight, we have the pleasure of welcoming Senator Antoinette Cedillo Lopez, who's going to tell us about a couple of bills that she's
I think you have a third bill you're sponsoring too, aren't you?
Well, I actually have a few, but the two that you asked me to talk about are the Green Amendment and the Second Chance Bill. And before I do that, I just wanted to thank everybody for coming. I really appreciate it, and to also compliment you, because this is so important. Citizen advocacy in our democracy, which, as you know, has been under threat, is just crucial. And so lifting your voices, participating, watching what happens it's just what keeps everything running as it should run. So I appreciate that so much. And Retake has been really awesome in monitoring everything that goes on, because it's not a secret, but if nobody sees it, then a lot can go on that we just, you wonder, you scratch your head and you say, how did that happen? And so it's really important, and I so much appreciate it. There's a couple of bills that I was asked to talk about, and the first one is a bill that you haven't agreed to endorse. So I thought I'd start with that one. It's called the Second Chance Bill. And what it is the bill that would take a juvenile that has been tried as an adult, and it would eliminate the sentence of life without the possibility of parole. And for two reasons. One of them is that is an extraordinary long sentence when you're talking about a 16-year-old, life without the possibility of parole. I personally think it violates the cruel and unusual punishment clause. And then the second, and the Supreme Court has kind of gone there a little bit, but not all the way, in my opinion. And then the second reason is children's brains are not fully developed. And so they have one of the highest possibilities of change. And so what this bill would also do, in addition to eliminating life without the possibility of parole, it would provide for a parole hearing after 15 years of incarceration for a juvenile that was convicted as an adult. And then it would provide for a parole hearing every 5 years thereafter. And it's got a list of criteria, but the primary thing that the parole board would be looking for is has there been growth, development, change? They also look to see how the child has deported themselves in prison. And I mean, there's another reason there, and that is giving somebody hope. Because if you're incarcerated without the possibility of parole, you have no hope. And it's interesting because even trustees in the jail, really in the prisons, really like this. Guards and trustees really like this, because if this person it gives the person an incentive to comply with the prison rules and to be better. So I think it's a really important bill. What happened last session is it made it all the way. It passed the Senate. We actually got some Republican support, and it sailed through the committees in the House, and then it was on the floor. because we have these artificial deadlines, it never was heard on the floor. And so it just was so close. And so I'm hoping that the governor will put it on the call along with a couple of other bills that also just were so close and just didn't quite make it last time. And it would be great if you all endorsed this bill and followed it. That would be a wonderful thing.
Can I ask you something real quick?
Of course.
First of all, it's not as if we haven't decided on this. We'll be talking more about how difficult it is when we have to keep it to 15 bills. But
Okay.
the other thing I wanted to do is to ask you whether it would help if our folks started pestering the governor to put it on the call. Yes.
That's my second agenda here, is to ask you if you believe in this bill, to email the governor and say that you think that it's time. The bill will affect last time I checked, about 75 people, but every time there is a child convicted as an adult that's serving a sentence for more than 15 years, it will affect that child too. So it's about 75 people. I've met some of them, and it's extraordinary. It's extraordinary the transformation. And I just hate the idea of throwing a life away. I want to emphasize, I've gotten a lot of calls from victims of crimes of these children, and the victim is not cut out. They would still be able to testify at the parole hearing, and we actually went from 10 years to 15 years because of victims advocacy, and we went from every 2 years to every 5 years because of victims advocacy. And so I think it's a really good bill. There are quite a few other states that have done it. I think and some of them in the South. I think last time I looked, it was about 12 states that have done it and more considering it. It is not, so I saw, it is not now on the governor's call. The governor hasn't issued her message, and I haven't heard one way or another whether she's going to put this on the call.
Okay.
But I also have heard that not very few people know whether their bills are on the call or not.
Yeah, that's the same with the lending bill that we're hoping would be on the call. We're not sure. It doesn't look like it will be. Sheila,
Right.
Did you have a question for the senator?
Yeah, and just if you have questions, everyone use the raise hand function, please. And that's what Sheila's doing. And you're muted.
Sheila, you're muted.
Here we go. Can you give us the bill number?
It doesn't have a bill number because Senate bills, when they're pre-filed, don't automatically get a number. But if you look at the list of pre-filed bills, it's called the, what is it? Juvenile parole bill.
Thank you.
Okay. And Cindy?
Yeah,
You said you had, or there were at least 10 to 12 other states who have successfully implemented this program.
Yes.
Then you have some great case studies that you're able to show.
Yes, and what it shows is the recidivism rate for children is much lower. It's extraordinarily low. One of the studies had a 1% recidivism rate for children who get this kind of relief. So it's pretty extraordinary, and that bears out the data is, children's brains are not fully developed, and sometimes they make really big mistakes. And some of the people who are in life without parole, some of these children, like one young woman, what she did is, it was a violation of the felony murder rule. She didn't commit the murder, but she handed her boyfriend the gun when he asked her. It was in her purse, and he asked her for the gun. She handed him the gun, and she got a life without parole sentence. And she's a completely transformed person. And I don't think she got adequate counsel, because given the relationship with the boyfriend, there's a lot of coercion there. So it's not like she had a lot of free will. And that's true for a lot of the girls in this circumstance. They kind of were acting with a boyfriend. So it like I said, these stories are just heartbreaking when you meet them and talk to them. And they've been in prison for quite a while. They've had extraordinary experiences.
Sheila, did you have another question? And if not, could you lower your hand.
She has another one, if I lowered.
I do.
Okay.
I excuse my ignorance, but what is the status um, for felons who have completed their prison sentence? And could this relate to their ability to vote?
Yes, it does. They would, if they're tried as an adult, they are felons. And it does affect their right to vote. They have to complete their sentence and do all the paperwork to get back, to get the right to vote back, to get the franchise back. So yeah, good question. And
But
it does.
so this bill would give people who entered the system at such a young age could return their ability to vote, correct?
Only if they
If they're released.
Yeah, only if they're released on parole. And actually yeah, so it's a long haul.
Right, I understand. Thank you.
Okay, and so the Green Amendment.
Well, the Green Amendment is my highest priority, and it does not need to be on the governor's call because it's a constitutional amendment. And so it will be heard. And what I'm excited about is last time we had 4 people who co-sponsored it, and this time we have about 25 legislators who have said that they intend to co-sponsor it. With the 25, the last one was Senator Bobby Rodriguez from Taos. So I'm very excited about the momentum the bill has. When people hear about the potential and what this bill can do at this time of climate change, they get excited. Now, not that it's going to be an easy ride, but having 25 people, especially if we get it through the legislature, if we have 25 champions around the state, that will help us when it gets on the ballot. So what a constitutional amendment has to do, it has to get a majority vote in both the House and the Senate, and then the governor couldn't veto it if she wanted to. It goes straight to the people. It'll be on the general election ballot, and it'll be something that you will vote on in November. And I predict that it's going to win with at least 60% of the vote, because everywhere I go, people are so concerned about the environment and climate change. And they really believe, some people are surprised. They say, you mean I don't have a right to clean air, land, and water? And the answer is, well, I believe that it's an inherent, inalienable right. However, it's not a written right in the Constitution. And so once it's written into our Constitution, it's a duty that the state has to comply with the Constitution. And so it's going to have preventive reach. I believe that it's going to change the dialogue around the roundhouse, because when legislators know how much the people want a clean environment, it's going to change attitudes. And I think that's really exciting. It's also going to reverse a really unfortunate case, the Sanders-Reed v. Martinez case, which is a case interpreting Article 20, Section 21 of the New Mexico Constitution, which is called the Pollution Control Amendment. And it's in the miscellaneous section of the Constitution, which is kind of, if you look through the miscellaneous provisions, there are a lot of little policy things that aren't even complied with by the legislature. So it's in a weak place in the Constitution, and it puts all of the onus on the legislature. It's the legislature that has the responsibility to do something. I have read that Article 20, Section 21 on the floor, particularly when somebody starts talking about the benefits of oil and gas to the state. I stand up and I read it. But the court in Sanders-Reed v. Martinez had an opportunity to use it to stop Martinez from undoing all of the climate change and environmental regulations, not legislation, regulations that were passed during the Richardson administration. And the court declined to do it. And they did not use Article 20, Section 21. So this amendment is designed, it's written to reverse that result. And so that's the second reason I think it's so important. And the third reason I think it's so important is it will allow individuals, the people, to hold the state accountable if they fall in their duty to protect the environment. So that's the Green Amendment. I'm really excited about it, mainly because we have 45 groups, including Retake, so I'm very excited about it, that view this as on their priority list. And we have 25 legislators who stated that they intend to sign it. Now, the way it works you can sign a bill just like I signed the abortion repeal, but that doesn't necessarily make you a lead sponsor. You have to have your name at the top, and then and there's like 4 provisions. So I'm at the top of the House bill. I will be at the top of the House bill and the top of the Senate bill. Joanne Ferrari is the lead sponsor in the House, and so she will carry it on the floor. Our strategy this time is to file it not just in one House, but to file it in both. And then whichever gets through committee first and goes to the other side is the bill we'll focus on.
Okay, so we had a question here from Katie Brule.
Sure.
She has
In
talked
the
with,
chat, and then we'll get to your question, Rich.
she has talked with Chris Chandler about the bill, and Chris Chandler said she's against it because policy could be made by lawsuit rather than policymakers. And she also said that it might be able to be used to slow or stop landfill activity because of nuclear.
And that's her district.
Well, the problem with the landfill activity argument is that the state doesn't have any power to stop landfill activity at all. So that's just not legally correct. And then the second article about the courts making policy is the policy is clean air, land, and water. And the court's job, as it is for all our constitutional rights, the right to free speech, the right to equal protection, the courts enforce it against the state. So they're not making policy, they're enforcing environmental policy. I have read the cases, all of the cases, or a brief of each of the cases that have been litigated in Montana and Pennsylvania. They're the 2 states that have green amendments. And now there's New York. They don't have a case because they just passed in November. And I've read all these cases, and it's done some really great things. It's invalidated really toxic legislation, like legislation not allowing the local government to zone or protect itself from fracking. It has invalidated, it's turned around permits. Like there was one permit for an exploration, a gold mine exploration well to be drilled, 46 of them, small wells to be drilled for exploration. And that permit was granted without taking into account the damage that it would cause to a creek that was going to go into the Yellowstone. And the court reversed that and said, you have to consider this. You can't just grant a permit without considering the environment. And there's a couple of cases that I know that would benefit here in New Mexico that I'm just aware of. And one of them is in northern New Mexico involving the state's failure to deal with adequately. Well, I'll just start from the beginning. So these women noticed, these 2 women had an organic farm, and they noticed that there was sudsy water coming down the acequia. And they also noticed that their land was getting very compacted and that the soil started just losing microorganisms. And they're organic farmers, so that they needed the microorganisms. And they investigated, and they told the state engineer that the water that Sipapu was returning to the river and for the acequia had this chemical, this salt that was changing the freezing point of the snow for snowmaking. And of course they're doing it because of climate change, because it's too warm to make snow, it just melts. But they get 70% credit for returning it. And they complained and said to the state engineers, and the state engineers said, we are not concerned with water quality, we just are concerned with water quantity. And this amendment would directly require them to consider water quality. And so right away, that's really important. It would change the state engineer's focus. And that is crucial right now.
Can you send me either a summary or those decisions? Because that's something we've been asked, like, would it generate spurious lawsuits? And they aren't. I've seen some of the instances.
I will. I'm happy to do that. I'm going to be running after this. So if I don't tomorrow, would you remind me?
Sure.
I will send you them. There's not been a single frivolous lawsuit dismissed as frivolous. And lawyers have an obligation not to bring frivolous lawsuits. And I can't believe that people would think that lawyers in New Mexico are more unethical than lawyers in other states. That's sad. But it hasn't happened in other states. It hasn't even happened in New Mexico. If people predicted that with the Civil Rights Act, and I think there's been 3 cases the last time I looked. It's just not. I've heard that in a lot from Republicans, and
So,
unfortunately, gets picked up.
Sorry. So do you have time for another question? Because Rich Wiener.
Sure, I do. I see Rich. Hi, Rich. How are you?
You're muted.
You're muted, Rich. So she doesn't know how you do.
Okay. Hi, Antoinette. Good to see you.
Good to see you.
I just have a general question. I heard the other day that the House hearings will be open to participation both in person and online, but not the Senate. The Senate will only be in person. Is that correct? Or what are the opportunities to participate remotely?
I do not believe that's
Watch for
correct.
two.
We're having the legislative council meeting on Monday, in which that's going to be discussed, but I would really strongly oppose that. But what I think is true is historically, the Senate has required the senators to be present in order to vote. And so the House has not required them to be present in order to vote. And so that's different. I'm very worried because, for example, Senator Bobby Gonzalez got COVID. And because of the Senate rules, he had to go home and he couldn't vote because he wasn't in Santa Fe. And he was very frustrated because he was capable. He wasn't so ill that he couldn't participate. So I'm really pushing hard to change that rule. But my understanding is public participation in the committees is going to be the same as it was last year. That's my understanding. I could be wrong, and the rules could change, but I would really look to see.
Who would be the best person to lobby with about that? Because that's something I'm very concerned about, especially given how many Republicans don't believe in vaccines. I'm not real interested in being in the same room with them.
Peter Worth and Daniel Ivy Soto, who's the chair of the Rules Committee.
Okay, thank you. Well,
Great.
thank you for being with us, Antoinette. And we will definitely be giving that juvenile justice bill a very close look.
I didn't know you limited to 15, so yeah.
Well, we're going to talk about that in just a minute, why we're doing that and
Yeah.
how. And so if you want to stick around to hear it, but
I unfortunately I can't, but I really appreciate this opportunity. And again, I just want to thank all of you for coming. And if you have individual questions, I think I'll put my email in the chat. Email me. Because I know some of this, it's not a very simple thing, because constitutional law is just, it's not something that you have to go to law school to study constitutional law, and it changes all the time, and it's complicated, and so people have a lot of questions. And it's very, I admit it's very confusing. And the other thing is sometimes I know I sound like a law professor and people will say, what the hell did she say? So if that is happening, just tell me, could you say that in another way? But I'm happy to answer any individual questions. And if you have other questions that I didn't answer, just let me know. And Paul, please remind me to send you those cases tomorrow.
I will. All right. Thank you, Antoinette.
Thank you.
All right. Bye-bye, everyone.
Bye-bye. So,
Okay, so we're gonna, well, I think we said this earlier on, but Rep. Andrea Romero is also gonna join us, but she's gonna come in near the very end because she has another meeting from 6 to 7. So she's gonna try to get on a few minutes before 7. So we're gonna move along now and talk about.
Andrea Romero still in law school?
Oh, somebody's got
She's nervous.
someone. Oh,
Rich,
hey,
could you
Rich, you
mute?
need to mute. Yeah. Oh, it's okay.
It could have been worse.
So we're going to talk about the bills that we know we're supporting now. I know we went over some of this last time we met, but a lot of you weren't on the call last time. And we're also going to explain a little bit about why we're limiting to 15. So we have 9 bills right now on our list on our website that you can see, 7 that we're supporting and 2 that we're opposing.
You can show the screen of the criteria.
Yeah, and so yeah, but let me just say something first, and then I'll share a screen. So we need to limit our total primarily because we just don't have the capacity, because it's not just we're supporting this bill. There's a whole sequence of work that follows from each bill, which is doing research, creating a summary,
Talking to the allies.
About the bills, and then tracking. Each bill has sometimes maybe 5 or 6.
Well, 6 committee hearings and 2 floor hearings, and for each of those, we have to send out an alert and track it,
Right.
and get somebody to observe it.
So
that just
It's a lot.
magnifies things. And when it was pre-stroke, Paul, that was really hard. And I can't even imagine how hard it would be for us to manage 45 or 50 bills like we
right.
have
So
in the past.
some of you may not know, a lot of you do, that Paul had a stroke in late July last summer. So definitely has affected our ability to get as much done as
quickly
as we used to. Yeah. So I want to explain how we're going to try to limit the number of bills. And in order to do that, we're going to look at the criteria. And I know some of you have seen this before, but it does help us be more discerning about which bills we're going to put on our list.
And then we're going to also, after that, we're going to talk about some specific bills that we know are coming. And we want to get some input from you folks about what you think, because it should be a democratic process.
That's all you need to.
Yeah.
Okay, so this is on our under the NM legislation tab on the website. And where's my scroll? I can't get my scroll to scroll.
That's because it's not, you got to get onto the page itself to scroll down.
No, I should be able to. There we go.
Oh, okay.
All right, so just quickly, we'll go over this. When we're considering which bills to support, these are the questions that we ask. Does the bill advance either social and or economic and or environmental justice? One of the big criteria. Does it have a potentially game-changing impact and meet a broad and pressing need in our state? Does it address the needs of significantly underserved populations or communities? Could the addition of statewide advocacy efforts push the bill through? So in other words, if the sponsors say, oh no, this is a slam dunk, it's gonna happen, then we might not put it on our list and put a lot of energy into it. Or other side of that coin is if we're told that there's no way the bill's gonna make it through, it's like dead in the water, then we won't necessarily put it on our list, because that again is gonna be extra work that then won't get us anything.
So given it, just for a second, let's take one of the criteria. If you think about the bill, the second chance bill that Antoinette introduced to us, that's something that my heart wants to support in the worst possible way. But if you look at the second, does the bill have a potentially game-changing impact and meet a broad and pressing need? I'm not sure that's a broad and pressing need. And does it address the needs of a significantly underserved population or community? Yeah, maybe it does. But it gets really tough when you start seeing bills like that. And you'll see we've got several climate bills that we know are coming and that we haven't even put on the list yet, but that we will want to talk about tonight. And so how we get it down to 15 is going to be an interesting
Right.
challenge.
We also consider if it's a top priority for one of our allies, that carries some weight. And then, bills that address low-income working families, the needs of tribal and rural New Mexico, climate change, those kinds of things. Those are our priorities. And it's hard. I'm going to go ahead and shut that off because I wanted to tell you, I'm not sure if Michael Spurberd McQueen is on tonight, but Michael and Cindy Paps, who is on tonight, I wanted to thank them. The two of them are going over all the bills as they are introduced. Cindy's, I think, looking at House bills, right? And Michael's looking at Senate bills. And there are, I think, around 50 plus so far just in the last week, because they started being pre-filed a little over a week ago, I think.
If you've gone to the website and looked for bills under NM Legis, not our website, but the states, the Senate hasn't introduced the bills in the same way, pre-filed bills, the way that the House has. They're not apparent at all. There's a link that you have to go to, and then you get this weird looking format on the bills. And so that's what
Right. So if you search legislation with the regular tool that is used to find legislation, you're not going to see any Senate bills. But there is a list up there. If you go to the homepage of nmlegis.gov, they have those like photos and topics on the top. There's like 4 or 5 of them, and they scroll by. One of them says, look at the Senate bills that have been pre-filed, and you can click on that, and it'll take you to a PDF. So if you're interested, I don't know why they're doing it that way this year.
I don't either.
Yeah. Okay. So now we're going to talk about some bills that we think are coming up, and we want some input from you if you have an opinion or some expertise about some of these, so that once they are introduced, if they are, we it'll help us determine whether we're going to add them to the list.
So among the bills there's several among the environmental bills, and these are bills that, of course we support, and what we are almost certainly going to do is have a list of 15 that are our kind of must-pass bills, and then a list of bills we support, but that we're not tracking and that we're not sending out alerts on. And because there's just no way we can say we're not supporting something like any of the bills I'm about to talk about. Environmental tax, electric vehicle tax credit, solar and storage tax credit. Those are 2 bills that certainly encourage the transition to a renewable, a sustainable life and address climate change. But when we have supported them in the past, we've been criticized for being elitist because they don't typically support, they're not something that poor people or even moderate income people are able to access. I had a conversation with Jay Levine today because I interviewed him for a radio show that'll be airing on Saturday morning at 8:30 on KSFR. Great interview with Jay.
And Jay is head of the Democratic Party
platform committee and
Spark committee.
Yeah.
And he's Renewable Taos.
He's one of the founders, co-founders of Renewable Taos. And so his comment was that the cost of electric vehicles has gone down so dramatically in the last 3 or 4 years that it's not inconceivable that in the next year or two, electric vehicles will be available for $20,000, $25,000. And if you tag on some tax credits from the feds and the state, that's enough to bring that price tag down into affordability for moderate income people or low income people. But he also says that without those kinds of things, we're never going to make that just transition. And so,
right.
But I'm interested in what people think.
We'd like to buy an electric car.
Yeah, but we're not poor.
Yeah. So, and if you have some thoughts about that, please raise your hand. But you want to move on and talk about some other ones, and if you have a thought afterward, go ahead and raise your hand when you're ready.
Yeah. The other one is the Zero Emissions Economy Act, which is the governor's new initiative through which she had said she wants to increase funding for the Environment Department by 49%. But both Jay Levine and I have now looked at that bill, and it's got some interesting things in it. It's setting goals for 2050 for 100% renewable, but it's got all these offsets, and it defines the difference between real emissions and offset emissions. And that is net zero language. And it also depends then upon the effectiveness of carbon capture, which has not been proven to be very effective at all. And without it, and there's other reasons too. So what do we do with a bill that, you know, the Energy Department, the Environment Department has been woefully underfunded forever. 49% is really important. And the other thing that Jay said that's important about it is that it would require the state to report on its emissions. And even if it's, you know, waving the flag that they're doing such a great job by 2050, the writing will be on the wall in their annual report on what their emissions are actually at. We don't really even know what methane emissions we've got in this state, except it's pretty obvious in Four Corners because you can see it from space. But so there are reasons to support the bill, but we may very well be seeking amendments. Just in general, how do you feel about bills that have positive elements, but also are really have very limited, you know, have some big problems? Anybody? I guess with 40 people, it's not the 40, 50 people, 65 people, that's what we've got.
Yeah.
It's not
Cindy-
easy to have a
Cindy's got her
discussion.
hand up.
Cindy, you had a, and then Elaine.
Yeah, so for me, it's sort of like, what's that expression? Oh, shoot, perfection is the enemy of good. So in a way, are we throwing out the baby with the bath? You know, I don't want to use all those aphorisms, but I think I knew what I hope you understand what I'm saying is that if there are some good elements to it, we should start somewhere. And if we keep finding ways to, you know, if we keep finding ways where we think it's not enough, I don't think we'll ever get to the point where we'll have a safer, healthier society, you know, in another 30, 40 years. So that's my first pass at a thought of it, that let's take what we can get and go and improve it as we move along.
Okay.
Okay.
Christy? And
Wait, no, sorry,
Oh, we've
we're going
got-
to try to take them in the order that they came in. So let's do it over here. I
Okay.
think Elaine was next.
Elaine Sullivan, you're up.
Oh, okay. There are two Elaines, I think, on the list. I just want to support and encourage realism about the breadth of what can be covered by retake and what can be managed by the two of you. So it's a hard decision. I think it is just, I really appreciate how hard it is. And I will support your saying, these are great things and we cannot do them. Thanks.
Thank you, Elaine.
Thank you, Elaine. Elaine's nice. Sandra Dransfield. You got to unmute.
Yep.
Sandra, you got to unmute.
She's working on it.
Okay.
I'm unmuted. Hi, I just want to share my observation that bills that really are messy, that aren't clean, that haven't been vetted well enough, they tend to die. They tend to get shelved very early in the process, particularly by the Judicial Committee, which will have the same chair this year as it had last year. And I think as an organization, and certainly regarding my own organization, I think working on bills that have been well vetted, that the language has been well thought out and has a number of co-sponsors makes a huge difference in our success rate.
Yeah, okay.
All right, thank you, Sandra.
So
Who's next?
is it Aline?
Elaine.
Ellen? Yeah. go ahead.
Well, one of the factors, if a bill is pretty good but has something wrong with it, is whether you have any connection with the sponsor or sponsors. Because often you can talk with a sponsor and get them to make useful changes. And if it's somebody that you, for one reason or another, can't communicate with, or they're just adamant and they won't communicate, then that makes a big difference.
Okay,
Yeah,
yeah,
yeah.
great. Okay, Hamilton.
Yeah, I was struck when you were talking about this bill that the changes necessary are really fairly specific and require people with knowledge about environmental issues and whatnot. So I would leave this one for Jay Levine and other people who really are committed to totally committed to environmental issues, and that we should take issues that have a more general perspective. So I would not support going ahead with this particular one.
Thank
Keep in
you.
mind, the other thing we have to think about is, are we going to oppose it? Like, we're going to oppose a couple of the climate bills from the governor.
Yeah,
This one was one that net zero was a bill we were going to oppose. And this really is her net zero bill.
so, yeah,
So-
but we haven't really looked at it that closely yet, right?
I have.
Okay, all right, so
Yeah.
some work to be done there. Oh, Christy went away. She put her hand down. Okay, Andy Payne.
Yeah, I like what Paul said about working on amendments for this bill. If it has some good things about it, good aspects about it, it's heading in the right direction. I think it's good to get it out there and get it exposed and get it heard. But then we need to work on the amendments for it. So
Okay.
that's all I would say.
Thank you. Adam?
Yeah, Paul, I mean, I share some of your concern that there are some sort of net zero elements in the climate bill, but as I understand it, it caps the amount of offsets at 10% or 10% of 2005 levels. So it's, I think that doesn't, I'd want a better analysis, but that doesn't sound too crazy to me, and maybe we could fight to lower that. And the other, as you pointed out, there are many other good things in the bill. So I would tend to support it, but push for sort of, reducing that offset percentage to as much as we can.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you.
So did you want to talk a little bit about a couple of your bills?
Yeah, this won't take long, but it's.
Oh, and one of the things I wanted to mention too is that of the 9 bills that we already have up on our website that we know we're going to support or oppose, there's a possibility that a couple of those won't even be introduced, like the small.
Well, no, they'll be introduced, but they may not be on the call, so they may not.
So they won't, they won't go anywhere. So if a couple of those drop off, then we'll have room to fit a few others.
So the other bills are really different in terms of my reasons for raising them. One is the Independent Redistricting Commission Constitutional Amendment, which is being introduced. And that, of course, is something we want to see passed. But I have heard from so many legislators, please, not this year. We don't have much time. And there's so much bitterness and resentment about what happened in the session. And we don't want to have a nonstop forum for the Republicans to bash how the Democrats are gerrymandered like crazy and stuff like that. And so there's just a lot of people who will resent this bill being on, it has to be on the call because it's a constitutional amendment. I mean, or it doesn't need to be on the call.
Mm-hmm.
And so there's another bill in the same category. There's a memorial that's being considered around low rate, around small loan rates. And that's something that is also something where legislators are not real interested to just spend time on a memorial. And yet, if we can't get the full bill on the call, calling for a study might actually result in people being able to discuss the issues and come up with some solutions.
So
Andrea is here.
Yeah, Andrea Romero is here, our representative. And so, but we do have, so we're gonna have to cut this conversation short, but there's one, do you want to take Jennifer's question and then
Yes.
we'll get to you, Andrea? Go ahead, Jennifer.
I just wanted to sort of give, I hear what you're saying about them having just been through the slog of the redistricting fight and all of that. But I think that the other side of that is that if you let too much time go by, it won't feel, you kind of has momentum now that you see what's wrong with the process, how what they passed before didn't really quite cut it. And if you wait too long, then it might never really have the sense of urgency. So I'm a little worried about not tackling, I could see an argument for laying groundwork this year and making sure that the redistricting stuff is on the long session next time. But I'm nervous about letting that drop too long because it doesn't come up again for 10 more years, and then you get up against it and you don't get a good solution. And so I think there's another side to the resentment of what they just went through. Is it's fresh in everybody's mind what we need to do to fix it. So there's that.
Okay, thank you for that. And somebody was asking about a water bill, but maybe if we have time at the end, we can address that. But let's go to Rep. Andrea Romero first. So we don't have too much time.
Hi, everyone. Good evening.
Welcome.
Hi, thank you. Thanks all for meeting. This is my third forum tonight, so I think I've got my talking points in order. I know you're all very interested in housing, and I did hear water, so I love hearing that too, because I will be working on a couple different pieces of legislation there. If you're interested, I'll tell you. But on housing, we will be basically trying again at modernizing our housing code in order to basically reduce barriers to housing and make it easier for those who are facing eviction to have a bit more time to cure, in particular if it's a financial situation in which they're facing where they can't pay their rent. There's a lot of subsidies right now available, and many renters just don't even know that they exist. So from a legal perspective, this just gives folks an opportunity to have law that actually helps them. Right now, if you're facing eviction, it's only 3 days before you have to be out of your home. Even the apartment association is on board with us extending that timeline to 11 days. And they know too that they would prefer to be paid than have to go through the legal process of eviction. So this just basically clarifies rights between landlords and tenants. And this is something that we got through the process to the Senate through a committee and ended up in Senate Judiciary with the other 133 bills that got blocked up there. So we're trying in a second attempt. We have a governor's message. And so we're hoping to push this through. I can send you all a fact sheet. We're working on it now, but would love to have your advocacy with that. And if there is interest in water, I'm working on Water Data Act and modernizing the Office of the State Engineer job description for the vacancy that's there now.
Okay.
Okay.
What I understand, and maybe you can verify this, that the mid Rio Grande water advocates have a budget that they're pushing to have inserted into HB2. Do you know HB2, for those of you who don't know, is the House budget, which is pretty much what drives things that have an allocation. Do you know anything about where the status of that is?
I haven't heard from the advocates about whether or not that's in the budget. We're pushing for an additional 18 million for the Water Data Act. Only one agency of 4 currently has it in their budget. And this is just being able to take note of what water resources we have in the state right now. There's no uniformity in how we collect information on water. So, in conjunction with the Middle Rio Grande, I know that Mike Hammond is the governor's appointee focused on water around the state. He's an ally of ours in working on the space of water. We were just at a water conference this morning talking about all of the needs in that space. Our interim committee also appropriated $12 million as an additional resource for the Office of the State Engineer, who houses all of our water rights, all of our water resources in the state. They need to build capacity there, and again, have a vacancy at the state engineers level. So we're all keeping tabs on this. I think folks that are looking at environmental issues, this is one of them in conjunction with the Green Amendment. You know, drought is our burden in the state, and we've done a lot with energy transition, but we haven't done enough with drought. So definitely focused on that moving forward.
That's an understatement in terms of haven't done enough. We'll try and get Norm Gom on to have him talk about water. We've had him on before.
Does anybody have any questions for Representative Romero? No?
You do have your speaking points down. Yes, please send me your fact sheet, and that's a bill we will be supporting. I'm fairly certain. And thank you for making time for us for the full day.
My pleasure. My pleasure. Good to see everybody.
Thank you.
Nice to see you too, Andrea.
Okay, so we have about 5 minutes left, and there's a couple other things we wanted to mention. Is there anything else on the bills that you want to mention really quick, Paul?
Well, I mentioned that I got some input on the independent redistricting bill. And I kind of agreed with what Jennifer said. I think it's like, it's fresh in their minds, and it's too damn bad that it's inconvenient for them to have to talk about it. I realize there's only so many hours in a session, but when you've had as contentious a process of redistricting as we just experienced, it seems like they ought to be receptive to hearing other ideas in another way. And frankly, I think there might be a number of legislators who would just love to have their hands off of this forever. If we can figure out and it doesn't seem like it's a very difficult fix. It's creating an independent commission that does it from soup to nuts and doesn't send something to the legislator to tinker with.
Anything about the predatory lending?
The predatory lending is a little more complicated in that there's concern that it's not going to be on the call. The governor has said she'll put it on the call if there's an agreement. Well, that's like not possible, because all you have to do is tell two negotiating parties that if there's an agreement, we'll get to have a bill that will restrict one of the parties. And so that party doesn't have any incentive for saying, yeah, let's talk. Because right now they've got 175% is their loan cap rate. And the starting point of discussions would be 99%. And so they'd be giving up, 76% for just coming to the table. And if they just refuse to come to the table, then the governor won't have a consensus in the legislature, and it won't be on the call, and they'll have 175%. So why would they do this? So we're working with a coalition, the Fair Lending Coalition, and I was in a conversation with them today, and at least Think New Mexico and Retake and a couple of other members of that coalition are strongly going to press the governor to put it on the call. We need to get this done.
Yeah. Okay. Oh, somebody just asked, I'm sorry, give me a second here. There was a question in the chat that I wanted to, that's not it. Sorry. Scroll bar is not working very well. Oh, Teresa, I heard there's a hydrogen bill being worked on in the House. It was a better bill than the governor's. Do we know anything about it?
All I know is the governor's bill was horrible. And I think she heard so much. She's said that her 27-page draft is off the table and that a different bill, and it's almost certainly going to come from Nathan Small, and that would be the House. So yes, and it will be better, but it will still not likely to be anything. We will do anything but oppose.
Okay.
But we will look at it.
Yeah.
We'll certainly look at it.
And Jeff Haas, hi Jeff, is asking, do you know if the second chance bill applies to current prosecutions, or is it limited to existing juveniles? That might be a question that you could email Antoinette Cedillo Lopez about.
Yeah, I don't know the answer to
Yeah,
that.
we don't know the answer to that. Okay. And we're
we
not
will-
going to get to all these comments because we're almost out of time, but I do want to say before we close, we still need at least a few more hearing observers if anybody's interested in that. Some of you have said or put in the chat last time, I'm interested, but if you could please go to our website and go to NM legislation, it's in the top menu bar. And on that page, if you just scroll down a little bit, there's several items there that are linked. It says volunteer to be a hearing observer. And click on that, it takes you to a form that'll take you just like a couple minutes to fill out. Because that way I've got everybody's name and contact information and the times that they're available, all I can just download that into one thing. So the plan is, so I hope that if you are willing to be a hearing observer, you'll do that. You can do it from home, watching the webcast or participating in the Zooms. You don't have to go to the Roundhouse. But if you want to go to the Roundhouse, you can go in. You have to show proof of vaccination, all 3 shots.
Unless you're a Republican legislator.
All 3 shots. And if you have a medical exemption, then you have to show a negative test within the last 48 hours before you want to enter. So you can go if you want to, but this can all be done from home too. And if you could do that in the next couple of days, what I'm going to do probably this weekend is I'm going to compile everything and I'll send an email out to everybody who's volunteered to be a hearing observer. And we're going to try to do some sort of quick orientation sometime next week.
Keep in mind that while the session opens on Tuesday, it's unlikely many hearings will get started until late in the week at the soonest, because they've got a
Couple of
lot
days.
of
Yeah.
stuff, business.
And we
stuff to
can't
do.
get everything updated either because the committee lists usually don't get published, the updated information with contact info till a couple of days into the session. So
Andrea, do you know when the committee assignments will be made and finalized? When?
It should be day 1 of the session. So we're going to be clarifying a couple things, land grants committee that was dissolved last session to this session. And then we're doing the rules on Monday and we were just hearing from the Senate, they're doing their rules on Friday. So we'll hear about what the public element's going to be like, what the hybrid sort of nature of everything may or may not be. So we'll know the Senate's doing Friday and the House is doing Monday.
okay.
Could you just send us a note and let us know?
Or will
what it
they
is?
post that on the NM Legis website? Okay.
Yeah, both and I'm happy to do that and it'll be posted.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
And next week, we will be meeting again on Wednesday from 6 to 7, and we'll have Bill Souls with us. And we're going to probably talk to him a little bit about some of the small loan rent lending, because he introduced the 36% that got kind of butchered in House Judiciary last year.
Well, but if you read Milan Simonich's column, I think it was yesterday, Senator Souls said he wasn't going to introduce it again this year because he doesn't want a bill he introduced to then go be amended to 99% instead of 36%.
And what we're actually hoping will happen is that the House will introduce a bill that is asking for 99 and for loans under 1,000 and 36 for loans over 1,000. And then the Senate can pay it back and fix it in the Senate and send it for
Bring it all down to 36%.
Bring it all down to 36. So there could be some interesting maneuvering.
Well, we're a little over time and we apologize for that, but thank you everyone for being here tonight. We really appreciate it.
Sandra, I texted you the other day and haven't heard back. I wanted to talk to you about the Mimi Stewart Zoom that you're doing. So let's try and connect.
Thanks, everybody. See you next week.
All right, take care and thank you all very much.
Thank you.
Have a nice the rest of your evening. Bye-bye.
Yeah.